Namaste and Namaste and greetings. I, Reetlath, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the seventh day of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship. This training program is organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center and would be chaired by Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, visiting distinguished professor, IMPRI. This program has an excellent panel of experts joining us and who would be sharing their expertise for the duration of this program. We're honored to have a distinguished panel of experts joining us for day 7, which includes Professor Rukaiya Joshi ji, advisor, mentor to CSR and NGOs, Mumbai, retired professor, chairperson, Center for Education in Social Sector, SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. Ms. Anna Usha Abrahimji, former director, Mukand Engineers Limited, and former chief corporate communications, Mukand Limited, and Mr. Yash Agarwal ji, founder, Public Policy India. The panel of convener comprises of Dr. Arjun Kumar ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Professor Gumati Sridevi ji, and Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji. Proceeding further, I welcome all the participants to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for being interested and putting your time, energy, and efforts into fostering the development of young women leaders in public policy while helping us to bring together the practitioners and participants through this course for impactful policy research and action. We have also shared course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind the housekeeping announcements once again. Please join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Now, without any further ado, let's start our program. Firstly, I'm delighted to call upon Professor Vibhuti Patel ji to deliver the opening chair remarks.
Thank you, Reetnath, and welcome, Professor Rukaiya Joshi. First of all, I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Dr. Shalu Nigam, Ms. Priyanka, IMPRI team, and also welcome Dr. Ms. Anna Usha Abraham and Mr. Yash Agarwal and esteemed participants for this day 7. A brief overview of what all has transpired in the previous 6 days sessions is first that it all started with a big bang where Comrade Amarjit Kaur, she gave a complete profile of women's movement and women's rights concerns right from the freedom movement to the date, and she also warned us about the polarization on identity politics and need for solidarity among all marginalized sections. Day 2, where my presentation covered economic trajectory and what kind of developmental model we had followed and some of the landmark contributions made in terms of towards equality report, Shram Shakti report, national perspective plan, CEDAW, India establishing National Commission for Women, State Commission for Women, and currently the 33% reservation for women in the parliament, which was preceded by 33% women's reservation in the local self-government bodies way back 30 years back in 1994. Ms. Urvashi Prasad, a young thinker and a practitioner who had worked both in the NGO sector and currently she works with Niti Aayog. She gave a testimony, her personal testimony of working in the field and with the community, and she also inferred that young women who are pioneering in the new era in public policy, they are now catalysts for change. Day 3 was again, I had a presentation on empowerment and development initiatives for women in India, that after the sixth five-year plan, India came up with a separate chapter in the plan document on women and development, the paradigm shift from women being clubbed in the weaker section, from there to women and development, parameters of development change, where 33% women, the component of women's component within the plan anti-poverty programs that started gender responsive budgeting, which India accepted in 2005. And India also signed Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000 and Sustainable Development Goals in the year 2015. So in terms of public policy, a lot is happening. Professor Roxana Marinescu from Romania, she gave a worldview on the feminism and 4 stages of feminist waves and waves of feminism, and how all of them strive for global gender equality, and what kind of challenges which were faced in the first phase, which focused on women's rights, second phase, which saw the women's question in the binary of man and women, third wave, which was far more inclusive, where LGBTQIA and other marginalized sections and the intersectional vulnerabilities came into the perspective, and transnational gender solidarity was also focused. And the fourth wave now, current wave, which is informed by information technology, digital technology, lot of campaigning happening on social media. It has also completely and more individual level of quest for change that is there. Earlier were collective endeavor, and now we see more and more individuation. And also, the question of environment, climate change, how they started getting associated with the feminist activism. She brought those aspects. In day 4, we had a very good presentation by Medhavini Joshi from Ambuja Cements, who talked about her experiences of working in a community-based organizations among adolescent girls in Vacha. And now when she is into the CSR project of the corporate world, that how young women are leading with purpose and making a difference in the lives of their family, of the community, and their own lives. We had second presentation on the same day by Dr. Purnima Chauhan, where she talked about how young women leaders are empowered in the local government, in the local governance, both in the urban local government bodies as well as in the Panchayati Raj institutions in the rural areas. And now we have 6 round of elections of the local self-government bodies, and many of them have an excellent leadership quality. She also quoted UNDP report, which said that 44% of women are taking independent decisions in the Panchayati Raj institution, while still 56% of women elected representatives, they are proxies, like the decisions are taken by their husbands or male members. So, but this is a very important finding, that 44% of women are taking decision about their constituency according to the needs and demands of the people. Day 5, we had we also had a presentation by Sangeeta Rege on day 5, where she talked about the question of public health, and with special focus on young women's public health, and plus women who are taking leadership role within the healthcare system, both in the private sector and the public sector. And what do you see, that though women constitute 70% of the healthcare services, they don't have much decision-making power, which also came out very strongly during the pandemic. And WHO also provided a special document on need for acceptance and mainstreaming of women's wisdom and ground level experience, because they are the first person contact when it comes to patient care, because most nurses and ASHA workers and Anganwadi workers and healthcare workers and Gram Sevikas, they are the ones who know the pulse of the people. So it is very important. And then also technicians and doctors and other scientists who are playing very important role in the healthcare system. Their wisdom and their experiences are also extremely important. The last session we had, day 6, where we had a Dr. Nivedita Haran, who talked about how women in public services, especially in the governance and administration, are playing important role. The new leadership, and we are seeing increasing percentage of these women who are qualified, who are into Indian administrative service, foreign service, diplomatic service, and what kind of what kind of challenges that they are facing. We had a very good presentation by Advocate Audrey de Mello, who talked on the basis of her organization Majlis, its work of over last 30 years. And she said that the kind of challenges that women are facing in terms of sexual violence, and also how the legal system responds to women as clients, women as litigants, women as professionals, women lawyers, and women as a legal service providers. And she said that there's a misogyny, strong misogyny, which is existing there, both at an operational level, at an ideological level, and in the criminal justice system, which day in and day out she had to face. And still we also need to collectively see to it, because India has extremely progressive constitution, and she said that constitution is our touchstone for any kind of work on empowerment. And she said the legal reforms we had over last 40 years, they are very good in terms of drafting, but they should not remain on paper. We need to demand social accountability from the government and the state when it comes to its implementation. And today we have Professor Rukaiya Joshi, who will speak with us on the leadership lessons of young women in public policy. And Ms. Usha Abraham also has an experience of being in the corporate world, and also being in a close touch with the women's movement. And Mr. Yash Agarwal, he'll also give us a insight into the careers prospects for women. And we are going to have a really fruitful session today. Over to IMPRI team.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for setting such a positive tone for our discussion today. Now it is my honor and privilege to invite Professor Rukaiya Joshi ji to deliver a keynote address on leadership lessons for young women in public policy. We welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're on mute.
It's wonderful to know all that which has been done already, and therefore it's you know to go from here. Next steps, how do we take? And just to share that women leadership have been very close to my heart and my work all my life, and therefore it is very interesting that we are talking about it from the perspective of women leadership. So as ma'am brought it out, in all spheres of life, wherever there is leadership, you definitely find lacuna, whether it is corporate, government, or any other kinds of leadership, you would generally find male dominance. And though there is a literature on feminine style of leadership, whatever work, whether it is advocacy or whatever organization that you lead, you would find that there are certain aspects where you would have some strengths that women have in terms of leading the organization, which is softer and far more longer lasting than what we would normally find as quick fixing or trying to just finish whatever is required to be done. And therefore, the leadership qualities and leadership which women take up in terms of whichever areas, particularly here we are talking about advocacy. And I would tell you from my experience of being with a large number of not-for-profit organizations and CSR, and we would want to see that a lot of times they come into the area where they start with more passion and they work with that. But when it comes to rising up, many a times they take a back seat. And therefore, we need to see as young women leaders today and tomorrow. I'm not going to say only for tomorrow. I'm starting from who you are right now, and trying to sort of break the myth that leadership is only top down. Generally we believe that whenever we talk about leadership, we only think about the top management or the top people or the founders or the people who lead the cause or whatever that particular aspect which is, and we normally think that one person would lead that. So this is where we would want to believe, and maybe my first statement out is there: no matter where you are, you can be the leader. You don't need to be in the position at the senior level or a quote unquote decision making, because you at whatever level also take decisions. It is not only that the decisions which matter to the organization or the decision which matter to the cause which we are aspiring are the only decisions that are to be taken. And that's where you would find that leadership is not about only top down. This particular topic on leadership is so very popular. There will be, if you Google search on Amazon, you will have thousands of books written, and they've been written and they continue to be written. So people continue to write about this. It means that in spite of all this which has been written till now, we really find there are ways in which we can definitely develop the leadership in organization. And that's what I aim to spend little time with you on, giving you tools on how do you become a lastingly successful leader, where you take a long-term view and you have some tools in your hands to do it. It's not something that it is inborn and it is there with some people and therefore they become natural leaders and all that. We leave those kind of theories on the side, but we would today try and to understand that we, the people in this room, can be the leaders in our own rightful way from today as we are. And then there will be certain tools that we will be talking about as that. So one question that one would want to ask is that presently, are you utilizing your strength to the fullest? I'm asking this question, and maybe if anybody wants to raise hands that yes, I am utilizing my strength to the fullest, may raise your hand in the box in your screen. So I will know as to how many of us believe that yes, I'm utilizing my strength to the fullest. Is it possible to see, Professor Vibhuti? We will be able to see how
they can anytime they can unmute and they can also start their video, so you can see them and you can listen. Hear them. Yeah,
so
she has already, Nikita Desai has already done it. So, madam, please unmute and also start your video. Yeah.
So, please tell me as to how, what makes you say that you are utilizing your strengths, your potential to the fullest.
Nikita ji, can you start? Hello, can you unmute and speak? She has raised hand. Hello. Okay. Anyone else who would like to speak? Please unmute and speak.
All right.
Hello. Yeah.
We go ahead. Is there anybody?
No, I see only one hand raised. It's by Nikita Desai. I don't know why she not.
I want to believe that maybe Nikita believes that yes, she's putting her best, and it's a good thing. What does it mean to me when she raised the hands? That she's conscious, she is looking at her potential, and she is aware of the fact that at this point of time in life, being a young woman leader, she is using her potential to the best. It's a good thing, and congratulations. I think we can, all of us, do this particular exercise to try and understand as to, are we doing this, doing this? All right, so how do we know that I'm using my fullest potential? For that, I have to know my potential. And this is where I want to make a reference, and I will share this reading with you, which all of you please go through later, is on Peter Drucker, one of the finest writers on management, and he worked with large number of leaders from the corporate sector. Now, leadership is commonly applicable to all kinds of works that we do. Mentioned about variety of leadership arena where women can also participate equally. So he mentioned, he worked with them, and when he worked with them and he asked them the question, do you know your strengths? And people said yes. Senior people would say yes. If I did not know my potentials, then how would I be successful? I mean, the fact that I'm doing well and I've been successful and I've been lastingly successful is because I know my potential and I'm using it for the best. But when he asked this question in a detailed manner to large number of corporate heads, most people said that they don't know their strengths, but they were wrong. I mean, this is a statement that he makes in his book on leadership, where he says that most people believe that they know their strengths, but they are not correct. What does it mean? It means that maybe we don't have enough instrument to know what our strengths are. So let's put up a few questions today to try and know what are our strengths. Now, why does he say this? Why does Peter Drucker talk about strength? Because he makes a statement in his book and in one article which has been hugely popular on managing oneself to manage others, that is the leadership abilities that he's talking about. He says that generally, now I want all of you to listen to this sentence carefully, because you and I, we've been grown up and maybe our environment, our society put up this to us, and maybe we can correct it for the generations to come, is that when we were not good at certain things, they said you work on it. And so if I did not like history, then I was told that, okay, you work more on history. But if I liked maths, nobody told me that you work more on maths. All right. So Peter Drucker, please make this point, and we can discuss that at later point, that he says that for you to succeed as a leader, you need to work on your strengths, your potential. What are you good at? Rather than working on your weakness. Now, what is the contradiction in that? We'll come to that. There is no contradiction, but there's just clarity on what we understand as weakness and what are the areas on which we need to work on. All right. So, for example, if you're talking about Sachin Tendulkar, his strength was that he was a good batsman. All right. You ask him to do bowling, or you ask him to do any other sports, maybe he will not be as good as batting, which he picked up as his potential, and he developed, and he had a coach, and he went out to do very well in his life. Similarly, it is true for all of us. Now, Peter Drucker goes out to say, and I want please to pay attention and tell me if there is any thought on that. He says, energy taken to make your strength stronger is far less than the energy taken to make your weakness converted into strength. I repeat, energy taken to make your strength stronger is far less than the energy taken to convert your weakness into the strength. And if you do that, you are more likely to get richer dividend in terms of success and outcome if you work on your strength. Make your strength stronger. And don't bother about your weakness. If you are not good at bowling, don't make an attempt. Don't go out to do this. Let somebody else do it. You go out and do what you are good at. Now, there is something which you need to work. It's not that you just keep on doing this. So there are certain things which go out to say that in case when you work on your strength, there may be certain habits, there may be certain things that go wrong, or there may be certain mental blocks or some kind of assumptions we make, or certain things which may not be right. They may be roadblocks in making your strength stronger. Those you need to remove so that your strength becomes strong. Now then, how do you work in an organization? How do you work as a team? Because success as a leader is never individual. It is always collective, right? So we all work together as team in most walks of life. And therefore, we need to work together. So in that situation, we say that we not only work on our strengths, but we also put the team together and work on each person's strength. So what does it mean? As a leader, what you are required to do is not to just give ad hoc any work to anyone and let everybody come together and let us all work together to a particular cause or a particular task that we have on hand. But put each person based on the person's strength. All right. So you need to help to know your strengths, and you need to help to know the strength of your team. And you work together like that. Now that is where, now how do we do? How do I know what are my strengths? So let me just ask you certain tips, give you certain tips for you to know this thing. So first and most important point which Peter Drucker talks about is feedback. That is, if you have been getting consistently good feedback from people around you, right from the time that you were young to what you become the CEO or you become the leader in a advocacy area or any other kind of an activity that you do. What does it mean? When you were young, if your teacher felt that when he and she is there, means this will be always there. It will be, things will be organized, he'll be on time, he will do this very well, he's good in communication, he's good at numbers, he's good at scientific aspects or whatever. So your teachers did, your parents did, your when you moved ahead in the higher education, your professors did at that point of time, your friends know, your cousins, people around you, they would have given you certain kind of feedback. So if you have been consistently getting feedback from different people from your life, not only academically, which of course is one part of it, but otherwise you've been getting consistently that kind of a feedback. Knowingly, you asked for it, you didn't ask for it, but people talk about it. So this is where you have been getting consistently the feedback that you are good at this, you do it very well, people congratulate you, then please understand that to be your strength. That is the area that you are good at. Similarly, we can create a questionnaire. I'm willing to even share that with you, that we can create a questionnaire which can be shared with with your colleagues, and you can give it to them, and they can also work around and find their strengths. Now, the point that we are making is that the success in leadership, the tips that we are talking here now, is about you work on your strengths and make your strength stronger. And you identify strength from your team, your peer, no matter where you are. You may be the beginner in your career, or you may be mid-level or higher level. Wherever you are, you always have people with you. You try and identify strengths. And there are ways in which you can identify. If you get positive, if you get good feedback, you feel energetic in doing something, that is the area to know. If you feel laid down, if you want to avoid, if you procrastinate, then you know that it is not your strength. So if you feel very positive energy, right, many a times you are able to see a kind of a destination clearly. You will say, "Arey, don't do this. If you do this, it will happen." Not that you have experience, but you have the strength. You are able to look at some destination very clearly. And if you are able to understand that, then you take this as your strength. If you are very passionate about something, you've been always wanting to do something, then mind that this is that is your strength. So if there is passion, if you can see the destination, at the same time, one more point that I want to give, you are able to balance some seemingly opposite things, where contradictions you can manage very well. Then you are part of this. You make most difficult things simple. Then it is you are working out of your strength. So whatever that can be, it can be knitting, or it can be cooking, or it could be anything. If you are making anything which is most difficult into simple, then mind you, it is your strength. So what have we done? We are simply trying to find out what are the ways you identify your strengths. And this we are saying from Peter Drucker's statement that we work with the large business houses, CEOs, and they also did not know strength. So it is a good idea that as young women leaders, we try to find out our strength right now. And instead of focusing on the weaknesses, we work and focus and spend more time and energy on our strengths and making strengths stronger. And if there is any roadblock, or is there any debilitating habit or anything which was, for example, Sachin Tendulkar at one point of time would get out only at 94, 93. He would, just before century, he would be out. So batting was his strength, but there at certain point of time, maybe psychologically or otherwise, so he had to work on that. He therefore cannot say that I'm going to stop batting, I'm going to start bowling. He cannot do that. So he went out to remove that as a debilitating habit, and you worked on it. There's one particular aspect also which I want, if I have time, please tell me when my time is over, all right? So I can stop. One more point that I want to tell you is about styles. Each leader has a different style, and style of working, style of communicating. For example, somebody may just pick up a phone and start communicating. So another person would just get up from the seat and go to the person to whom he wants to have a communication. He will not call, or he will not sit in his room. So another person would mail, and he would CC. So each of these people, or many more, I can just go on, many different ways in which you have your style. Your style need not be the style of others. And it is important as a leader for you to not only clearly know, and there's nothing right or wrong. You have to know your style of leadership, and you have to know the style of communication and working with all other people. All right. So as a leader, these are tools that I'm giving you so that you become successful. A lot of times, things don't happen. We don't achieve things in time only because there are certain things which we don't do right at a right time. And therefore, we are trying to see that as a leader, woman leader, in advocacy, there are certain things you need to do as that. So what you can do is, Peter Drucker says, go around and tell your team what is the way you do, what is your style. Even if they say, "Ha, ye to aise hi hai," but let it not be on their judgment, and let it not be on left on to their interpretations. You go out and communicate. I like to get things done like this. I want it to be planned well. I want to do the planning by Friday. I want certain things to be done in certain way. Go around and tell them. And not only tell them how you work, ask them how they work. Right? So it's not about you communicating about how you work or what is your style, what is your way of work functioning. It is important for you to know also their way. For example, I want to tell you, particularly if we don't have examples here in India, but if you have an international team, there are times where you may work with international team, and you may find that if it is a Chinese in your team, their style of working is very different from what Indians have, very different. So unless asked, they will not open their mouths. We Indians will just keep on talking, always, and we get reason to talk, but they will not talk unless you ask them. So as a leader, if you find that there is a person, if he could be Indian or she could be Indian, and you can find that a particular person is sitting quietly, it is your responsibility to ask the question, find out what that person wants to make a particular point or thing like that, and involve that person in this in conversation, in the decision that you are making. So this is the way you go out to say that how that particular person is functioning. For example, there are, I mean, again, when I give you example of China, I want to tell you their style of working is everything is pictorial, no words. They put everything in pictures. So if you say that this is how I'm going to work and these are the steps to be done, for all the 8 steps or 10 steps, they will put pictures in place. So because without pictures, they can't think, because their language itself is pictorial. And therefore, they have learned to think pictorially. And this is where they are different. So a lot of times, today's time is working with, people with from all over the country, particularly even in advocacy. If you're working with United Nations or you're working with global team, you would find that you will be working with a lot of other nation people, and you will have to know their styles of working and what works for them and what does not work for them, what is this thing. And also you need to know what works for you and how do you go around and put up these things together in trying to put up the leadership. So when you are talking about working on your strengths, you have to first identify your strength through the 5-7 points that we said and work on it. So take it for additional courses. Maybe now today, last 10 years, 15 years, we have gone into globally and it is in all spheres of education that we are talking about. People are now doing and taking only capsule information, capsule knowledge, or capsule things which they require for their work. So they don't now go into getting a generalized degree for 2 years and things like that. So they would be doing only this. For example, the course that has been designed here has been so well designed. It is only for you in terms of advocacy. How do we go around and learn? And people from different walks of lives have come, shared their experiences and different aspects of advocacy that is required to be done by the NGOs, by the people in the IS office, or all kinds of being in government. You will find that different people need to do differently, and this is how you need to work and work together. So know your strength. What are you good at? All right, build on your strengths. Okay, and you go on making your strength stronger and understand the strength of the employees or your team. Now, sometimes that may mean that somebody will have to be out of the team or somebody new has to come, or you have to realign the work that each one is doing. But nonetheless, if all the people work on their strengths, the team's performance goes out to be far more better than when anybody is doing anything. And it is not about only one person and the leadership that you're talking about. Know your style of functioning. When do you get up early morning? Do you work at late night? What do you do? How do you work? There are a lot of things that go individually and they are not same for everyone. Some of the people work very close to the exams. Some people do regular studies, and you will find that styles of working becomes different, and both can be equally effective in terms of performance in the final exams. But nonetheless, you have to know your strength. You have to know the strength of the others. You have to know your style. You have to know the style of your team, so that there's no communication. Ye aise karta hai, wo waise karta hai. You don't have any problem. And communicate. Most important part is you communicate what is your style and ask your expectation from the others and their expectation from you. Don't leave it just that I expect you to do this. No, this is not dictatorship. This is not leadership. The leadership is very much working together, very democratic, and each person's viewpoint is taken into consideration, working together. So see their style of working and work together and go out and make plans and put that into practice. So at this point, I may just want to see, if there are any questions on what I have said.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for generously sharing your valuable time with us. Your insights were not only inspiring, but also incredibly valuable for our growth and development in this field. And I believe I speak on behalf of everyone when I say that your guidance has ignited a renewed passion within us to navigate the challenges of leadership with confidence and determination. So thank you so much, ma'am.
I'm going to send 2 readings which you can send to participants afterwards.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Yeah. One is the regular article of Peter Drucker, and one is the one-pager note which can also be shared, which will give them things to remember, as they practice it, because this is practice of leadership, right?
Yes, ma'am. So the floor is now open for questions from the audience. You can raise your hands or type in the Q&A box.
I'm sure there would be questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Nikita. Hello.
Hi, Professor Rukaiya. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you for that. I remember briefly interacting with you at one of the SP Gen events many years back. Good to see you here again. Ma'am, I have a question regarding, when supposing I'm also working on a startup, which actually is involved in a new area, and we're 2 female co-founders. So, I've seen in terms of my own leadership potential, and I've had varied work experience, and I'm also involved in a voluntary basis in a trust. So dynamics a little different there. But I'm trying to see that when you're starting afresh, right? How do you really build that credibility? Is it more through a good board of directors, or is it through accurate communication and networking, or what are the tips that you will give for startup level women co-founders? Because the area is again higher education, and it's an area which I feel is not enough people are talking about it. There are a lot of collaborations, a lot of conversations, a lot of NGOs working for elementary and all those kind of. I've seen the whole journey, skills, etc. But really, as far as higher education is concerned or interdisciplinary learning, so what would your pointers be in terms of I won't say really proving myself, but really exhibiting that potential.
Yeah. So when it comes to startups, the leadership in that startups is very different from the general leadership that we are talking about. The startup leadership has 2 major aspects. One is multitasking, So you would have, since the team is of shorter, this thing, and you only are driving the vision, you only are a small team working together. So of course, here again, you will work on the strength. So even if between 2 of you, you will definitely make that clarity, and you will both not work on all the things. It may be a good idea that you work on the strength of each one of you. That's the first thing. But in spite of that, both of you will be doing multitasking. Means I'm making a statement here, is that you would be working in the area which may not be your strength. And in which case, it is okay. Because this phase of startup is not going to last forever. And sooner as you expand your team and as you grow, you would then start looking for people who will work on not your area of strengths and their area of strengths. So right now, you would be doing. Now, the second most important part, which you will have to keep in mind as a startup, is the risk and the risk mitigation. So 13 out of 15 startups fail. And those are the ones where there are guides, there are mentors. In spite of that, there is a failure. Because what we do is that when we start as a startup, we must have very clear understanding of what are the possible risks and spend more time in identification of the risks and prepare the plan for mitigation. Agar ye hua to kya kare? Agar ye hua, you started at a higher education activities in certain area, and you would have somebody else, like say for example, India is opening up to international universities to come. And you would find that suddenly you open up newspaper, and particularly you'll find that the university is setting up their unit out there. Now suddenly things have changed, the dynamics have changed. So you will have to get ready for the mitigation of the risk as to how do you then adapt to the new circumstances. What is that then USP that you would want to bring in at that particular point of time? So the two things is you continue to work as multitasker, even if it is not coming out of your strength, you do that temporarily till you have experts coming up and joining you, and that, or take help from outside if it is possible, and if finances do permit you. And the second one is the most important, more important, is to talk about risk calculation, understanding, and preparing a chart of risk mitigation. These are the two areas which you need to work on as a startup in particular. Does it make sense to you? Does it make sense to you, Nikita?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. All the very best to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to ask any question?
Rishika ji, you can go ahead with your question.
Hello.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm a college student right now, and I'm still
Yeah.
trying to navigate my career. And I feel like I have too many interests, and there are too many things that I'm good at. How do I figure out which one is pursuing a career in, and which one should be kept as a hobby as only?
Yes. So, have you taken your aptitude test, Rishika?
Yeah.
And what did the counselor tell you about your combinations of options of career options that you would be good at?
I took the aptitude test when I passed out high school, and I I narrowed my options down to psychology and political science. I want
Okay.
to do public policy, but I
Yes.
also would like to be a writer or a poet somewhere, but everything feels very confusing right now.
I'm not sure whether you would want to make a career in writing. Is
Okay.
there a dilemma there?
Yeah.
So then at this point of time, so while you did at 10th plus your general aptitude test, which is done at that particular age, and that is fine. For the young professionals, I can even share the name of an expert who does couple with this an advanced test, which is of interest test. So
Okay.
there is aptitude test, and there is an interest test, particularly for young professionals like you, and even little 5 years or 3 years people who have put into the work and like that. So you are raising this question rightly at this particular point of time, and you may want to take up this particular kind of a question at this point, so that you don't waste your time on trial and error. I tried this, I succeeded, I tried this, I failed, and then I go in to do something else, and then you lose out on time. And today in competitive environment, you can't afford to do this. So I may advise you that you, at this point of time, with your previous thing, with your education added to that, if you can take up your interest test now, that may help you in now deciding as to which way are you going to take up advocacy and psychology aspects of it, or you would want to go in for a more creative kind of a thing. What is your calling? After 4 or 5 years, maybe that may become little clear, and it may guide you rather than taking advice. So again, if you put your test to see whether what excites you, where you get more energy, where you are able to, what is your passion, and seemingly, things which you are able to manage the contradictions and things like that. So you can also use those tips that we talked about. But I may very, very honestly advise you to take your interest test.
Okay.
That may help. And I'll tell you, you may know from internet, or you may know people, but I can give you somebody who is doing it for year after year for corporates. And it may really, it's very scientific, and it may help you. It may guide you. Then you go out and do what you want.
That will be very helpful, ma'am. Thank you.
I'll share the name and the contact details with IMPRI. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Pallavi ji, if you have a question, you can go
Yes,
ahead.
Vichan, yeah.
Yeah, please.
Right. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for actually inspiring. I think Reet was absolutely correct in saying that it was very inspiring and very motivational. And I think we have a lot of positives, and it has given a lot of thinking for us to understand that where exactly our strengths are. All this while we've been just wondering, we're just going by the common norm, what is expected out of us. But to first realize that what our strengths are and then to work on them is something that has been missing from, I think, most of our upbringing and socialization process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with this regard only, I had this thing that, I mean, there are certain things that we commonly experience. Yes, we do experience patriarchy, we do experience some unavoidable responsibilities which we really don't want to forego even ourselves.
Yeah.
For instance, it is child upbringing. For instance, it is our social life. There are certain responsibilities that we have. But keeping all that in mind, how is it possible to grow? I mean, there is a lot that we have to battle out when we step out in public space, which if we say that even the male counterparts have to, but not in the way a woman has to experience. I'm talking about in general.
Yes.
And secondly, another thing I had in mind was one, of course, this is how to fight that out, how to battle that out. And secondly, just wanted to know that how to make a policy making process flexible enough to to address the larger category of women while keeping their individualities intact. I mean, we can have a policy on menstrual leave, but the resistance is that not all women face it equally. But there are a larger chunk of women who experience PCODs and certain issues that the pain that they go through. So I might not be the one, but there are others. So why can't a policy process have that flexibility and consider every aspect of an individual woman? While the needs of a pregnant woman might be different, a pregnant woman who has family support and a pregnant woman who is living in a nuclear family.
Yes.
So why is it, why and how can this policy making process recognize our individualities and try to cater to it? I mean, if I was a policymaker, I would always be enthralled with this question on how to bring everything under one roof and yet address individualities.
Yes. Yes, I welcome both the questions. To take the first question first, I want to tell you that in 2024, you are far better placed than maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago. I always take examples of Savitribai Phule. How and what they went through to sort of make things happen. It is only sheer passion with which you want to make things happen. So to me, if I give you my example, I would want to say that communication with the people around you must be constantly done, and take them together. So there is no kind of a conflict or a fight at home or around, which results into something very positive. You need to always have a positive communication, take everybody together, including your children. I mean, so as they grow, they also grow with your thought of, being gender neutral and all inclusive and things like that. And therefore, whether it is in-laws or, the partner or the extended family or, certain social norms. So, for example, there are times where I go out and clearly communicate that certain things I cannot do. I mean, which may be expected of a bahu or expected of a particular member of the family. But since you have taken up a particular task or a profession, there are certain things which you will not be able to manage, which maybe a lady who is a homemaker will be able to do it. So this particular aspect, and people accept it. Over period, people know that when it is Pallavi, it means it is this. They will accept it, and it will go beyond your small local circle. Larger group of people will accept. So it is very, very important in a positive way, in a very nice way, you continue to communicate. Sometimes, because we are so focused doing things and wanting to get things done, communication becomes a little gap. So my request to you is that things happen. When I was my son was 6 months old and I was doing MPhil and I had my exams to do, I talked to my husband and we got dabba at home rather than cooking at home, not even keeping a maid, because then you have to talk about rye and masala hai ki nahi hai. So, and then we sat together that if I have to do my MPhil when my son is 6 months old, then what should be the thing that must be done together so that, that particular time, that phase is done. So there are, and you would have Indira Nooyi or a lot of women, hundreds and thousands of them are there who would have done differently. And so many of them are there in this room. They would have their own examples to cite to say that how it is your personal journey. And in that, communication is one thing which you do with people, and take your people together. Stakeholders, we call it, as let them together. And that is how you can talk about it, So this is about the first part. The second question is on about which you said about. I'm sorry, if you can just repeat.
It was about, how the policy making process should be
Yes.
more flexible.
So yeah. So again, I want to tell you that we did that. The small example is of thalassemia. Now, thalassemia is such a small incidence in the entire healthcare sector, and we wanted to communicate to the health ministry, and we wanted to say that you are giving more emphasis on cancer and heart diseases and all that because the prevalence is high, and you take care of a major number of people. This is understandable. This which most of the policymakers would do. That's not an issue that you are doing it there for them. We are not saying don't do it for them, but do it for us. But we are going on and saying that you also include us, and if you are giving benefits of disability, you give benefit of disability also to thalassemia. Now, this became very, very easy for us to bring about, and therefore, what you need to do, as you rightly said, bring all stakeholders. The example of women menstruation is the thing you said. You include all people, the not-for-profit organizations, different kinds of leaders, different kinds of people, individuals or organizations working on that cause. Research papers may have been written in India or abroad. If you look around that, and if you see that how have they brought in, and it is possible today. Today, our policies are becoming much, much more inclusive than maybe, at the turn of the independence, we had many other issues. Poverty was so very prevalent, lack of resources was so much there, and therefore we were not able to do so much at that point of time. But today, in 2024, I may want to believe, out of whatever I'm hearing, reading about the policy making and the process of policy making, even corrections that happen. Suddenly you find that, okay, this particular aspect was not covered, and then you go out and make amendments and you add and you include that. So this would be an ongoing process. It is not something that you make one policy final and that is the end of it. You will always have a few things, but of course, the first one should be more comprehensive, including all stakeholders and taking it together. And that is when you make a larger team and take everybody's view on that. That is the best way of going about, so Edward Dueno talks about 6 thinking hats. You always talk about, take in your people will think very what maximum can go wrong. People will think how creative can we be. People will all that third person would be who will work only on data, all information, and what is the incidence of this, how many women have this or how many women have this. So you will know whether you want to cover what percentage of women and how you want to cover it up. And there would be something which you can always go out and add in the times to come. But the idea would be to work with a larger team and be inclusive. And it is an ongoing process. So don't think that first policy is the final one. So keep working on it. And that's the way to go about it.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering all the questions so patiently and in so much detail. Now I'm delighted to call upon Professor Vibhuti Patel ji for comments on the lecture and the
I think
discussion.
Professor Rukaiya Joshi is like, oh, I need to unmute. Okay. Yeah, so Professor Rukaiya Joshi, as erudite as ever, even when she came to my department to address the MA economics students, they were spellbound. And so many of them got so charged and so many new ideas they got for their future. No? So what emerged from her lecture is that we face daily challenges. Young women are facing daily challenges, but they are also coming up with developing innovative and effective ways to improve their lives and also bringing together their wisdom and creativity. Young women are leading change, and what she told, the most important learning from her lecture is that you have to be in the team. First of all, know your strength and weaknesses, and accordingly multiply your strength and try to overcome your weaknesses. And also working in a team is very important. So it's very important to be more amenable to other people's suggestion, be more reflexive. No, that also is very important. And she has always been an excellent mentor as for the young women. Thank you, Rukaiya.
Thank you for the kind words. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Yeah. I'll send in the things, and if there's any question, anybody needs any further information, I'll be always available. If they can write a mail to me, I'll be happy to answer. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We're truly grateful for your time, wisdom, and encouragement. We look forward to the privilege of having you as our guest again sometime. Thank you, ma'am. Now, I'm delighted to call upon Ms. Anna Usha Braham-ji, who will enlighten us on the crucial topic of effective networking and personal development for young women leaders. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reet. The previous talk was so interesting that I forgot that I have to present after this. Thank you very much for the introduction, and I hope you will find this as interesting. I'll start right away because I think we're a bit behind time. I just have a presentation to share. Can you see this?
Yes. Working mode, make it slideshow. Yeah, fine.
Is it clear now? So my topic for today, sorry, I'm just diving deep into it before I can say anything else because we need to hurry up a little bit. My topic for today is effective networking and personal development for young women leaders. I would like to start with personal development, and I think it will be a little bit of carry forward from what the previous talk was on leadership. The reason I want to start with personal development actually is because it makes a difference in understanding networking. I think all of us do believe that personal development is very good for us and we have a positive attitude towards personal development. as if we understand what personal development is, we grow as a person, It's through self-awareness to become a sincere, knowledgeable, confident, and efficient human being. This is important for us. The third point is important for us to understand personal development. People think personal development is, many people often confuse personal development with career development. Career development can be a result of personal development, but personal development is about yourself and how sincere and knowledgeable you are and how confident you are in whatever you do, to become an efficient human being. And a good person, if I can use that term, though good and bad is not the right term, but I'm just trying to explain what personal development actually means. The first step, in fact, even the previous speaker did speak about it. Most corporates, most companies, whether it's startup or otherwise, they have a vision and mission statement. But do we have one for ourselves? We need to have a value statement for us, and this is for life. I will always ensure that I'm sensitive, whatever you want, whatever your value is. It's your individual value statement. Remember to make it. We are so caught up in the studies and then getting a job and then, growing up, climbing up the ladder. We forget what the basic things are required of us as a human being and how we can progress further. A value statement is most important. Write down what are the values that you want and how you would go about life, whether in your career or in your personal life, in your relationships, in everything. These are values which I will not compromise. Put down your goals that you want to achieve in the next few years. It's not necessary the goal has to be forever. Like I did hear questions in the previous talk. If you want to become an engineer now, become an engineer. Later in life, you can become a writer, In the next few years, this is what interests me. This is what I want to do. And this is what I want to become. So put down your goals for the next few years only. List your priorities in life. And this changes according to age, according to the phase in life you are, and so on. When you are young and as a student, you want to make sure you get a job. That's your priority, getting a good job in this place, blah, blah, blah. Then it may be, your family, balancing your home and job. Later on, it is about career, building it. And much later, it is about giving back to society, probably. So your priorities can change in life. Always introspect. The earlier speaker spoke about finding your strengths and so on. You can ask other people today with social media. Everybody says great, 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 like for everything and anything. So it's very dangerous to look outside for honest information about yourself. So I would suggest you introspect. Sit down and write down, do an honest review about yourself. What are my weaknesses? What are my plus points? What are my things? What makes me happy? Keep asking yourself questions and do it often. Do it at least, every quarter or every year. And also keep your goals there and see how closer you are to the goals. So these steps will bring clarity into your life. And it's so important in today's world where we are so busy doing things. We are running from one place to the other, to one meeting to the other, or doing things all the time that we don't have time to think internally. Think, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So this would be my suggestion to start out with the first steps. Those of you who haven't done this as yet, please make it a priority and do it. It'll make a lot of difference. We'll see why. The ingredients required for personal development is, first, when you put it down, you will realize you understand your needs. You understand that you need time, you need more time with your family, or you need more time to read more about your subject, and so on. So personal development, when you put it down, you will realize that you will understand the ingredients that go into personal development is, first, understand your needs. Make it a habit to spend time every day by yourself, reflecting, just doing nothing. I don't think in today's world, we are always doing something, right? Or even at least reading, even that is doing something. I'm saying just sit down. If you read Krishnamurti, he says, just sit down and look out of the window. Do nothing else but look out of the window and think. So maybe even half an hour, just 10 minutes, it sort of puts things in perspective. It's very important for our personal development. Be curious. You need to be interested in many things in life, not just your work and back. And that's how people get bored. You need to be curious about other things as well. I said curious and not inquisitive. So there's a little bit of difference between the two. Read, listen, learn, experience. Read about other things. Be interested in anything. Listen to what people are saying. Learn more as much as you can about other subjects other than your core subject. Experience life. You can keep reading how to become rich. You can keep reading about how to be a wonderful person, how to be a leader, but experience it. Go out into the world. Do what you have read, what you have learned. Experience is the most important thing, according to me. Exposure to different cultures, views, ideologies. Don't just get stuck with, only chartered accountants, only engineers, only doctors. Keep talking only to yourselves, only your type of people. It's most important to be exposed. The difference when you look at education, the difference between, if I can say, the have and the have-nots within our country is lack of exposure, lack of opportunities. You may get the opportunity, but you don't have the exposure to really implement, rise up to the occasion. So exposure is very important. Acquire a diversity of information. Don't only go to people who believe what you say. Talk to people, read about things which say completely different things from what you believe in, so that it makes you think. Our education system generally doesn't allow us to think because it tells us what it is. We have to start acquiring this idea of thinking and forming our own opinions. So the more diverse our groups are, the better it is. Hobby classes, travel. Travel is the best way to experience. Many people say, oh, I can't afford travel. I'm sure we have all read about those tea vendor and his wife who travel every year all over the world. They have sort of reached out to every country in this world. So it can be done by anyone. You don't have to necessarily go abroad. Just go to a different place. Experience it. Experience things. It makes a difference. I will also say well-groomed is important. When I say well-groomed, it's just neat and clean. We don't like to eat out of dirty vessels, or we don't like to sit in a dirty room. Similarly, always be neat and clean so that people get a good impression. And you feel good also. So these are the ingredients for personal development. Why we must introspect and how do we introspect? It is very easy to say we must introspect, but how do we go about it? Go about it a bit systematically so that it really, in little time, can give you good benefits. I usually take out always a paper and pen and I put it down. I may be old-fashioned. Today, you can put it on your phone or do whatever. Put down the new things you have learned about people or subjects and things. What are the experiences? You're actually learning more about yourself. What are the experiences you enjoyed? Did you enjoy it? Did I not enjoy it? You sort of then realize what is it that you like more? Okay. What is it that caused you a lot of stress? When you actually say, oh no, today was a very stressful day, that's not enough. You just actually put down and say, what is it that stressed you? For me, for example, when I have to go somewhere, I get stressed out thinking, oh, is there parking there? Is there this? Is there that? Is there a proper bathroom? And so on. Today, it's very easy to find out information. Just pick up the phone and ask the person in that location, is there, what are the facilities? And if you are handicapped, ask if there is a ramp to go up and so on. So don't stress yourself. Just make the effort to find out. Okay. Understand your shortcomings. The previous leader already said, find out if it requires attention. Sometimes your shortcomings can be ignored. Most times it can be ignored because, okay, it is a shortcoming, but your plus points are much higher. But there are times when it is important that you work on your shortcomings. Find out if it, only through introspection, you'll realize whether it matters and whether it's a hindrance to your growth. If it is, work on them. I already spoke about stress, understand the mental and physical science of stress. List out what makes you happy is very important because you can spend more time doing that. List out what helps you relax. Many of us don't even know what makes you, what helps us relax mentally and physically. Sometimes it may be just, shifting through channels. Sometimes it may be talking to someone or playing with your pet or just going for a walk. Whenever I get upset, I like to go for a walk and talk to the trees, and it makes me plants or trees. Or of course, in Bombay, you don't have many of that, but it helps me relax immediately and lets my mind cool down. Keep checking your to-do list and goals, whether you're any closer. You don't have to check it every day in terms of your goals, but you need to know where you are on your path to achieving your goal. Introspection helps this and make a correction in your course. The fruits of personal development, we all know: better communication skills, interpersonal skills. We learn how to adapt to situations, conflicts. If you're cool and we do a lot of introspection, we can find solutions to the conflict that is there and understand why there is a conflict and try and solve it. We become more systematic and efficient. Teamwork, because we realize that everybody is going to achieve the same thing. We can collaborate with people. We know when we need to collaborate. All these items that I put down is actually the fruits of personal development. We keep hearing people saying, oh, I'm so bored in my job. I don't find it interesting. I don't find it this. I'm stagnating and blah, blah. Because we expect personal development to be done from the outside. We expect somebody else to put us onto some program, put us onto something. No, you can do it yourself. You can join programs. You can start hobbies. You need a change. You need that extra thing that for your mind and body to make you go on. Many of the jobs are repetitive. Almost all jobs are repetitive. That doesn't mean we are stagnating. Stagnating is when you feel that as a person, you are not growing. So it's actually personal development. That's where it comes. But if you still feel the place that you are or the situation that you are in is hindering your personal development, you are not getting the time for personal development, you're not able to focus on what you want to do, then it's time to move on. But it is not your position that is stagnating. Please remember, it's not that. Boredom comes again because you're not seeing it useful to yourself. So once you put personal development in a focused way and go about it in a focused way, boredom will not be so important to you. It will not be there, in fact, because you'll build a passion for what you want to achieve, how you are growing. You'll see your whole growth and you yourself will feel more passionate about it. The reason that I took up, sorry, I'm going a little too fast. Is it okay if I'm listening? Okay. Now I come to the second topic as effective networking. I think this whole program that you all are doing is a fantastic example of effective networking. The amount of people that Professor Vibhuti, Patel and IMPRI together have been able to get onto this panel in these 3 months is amazing. People from different walks of life, people from all over the country and maybe even somewhere else. But this is because of effective networking. Yet, people say, oh, I don't like networking. That person is a networker. We have a very negative attitude towards networking. That's because we think that networking is building relationships. Now, when you say building relationships, that's a very heavy word. Usually, whenever you go and you try to check out what networking, they say it's about building relationship. Relationship is a very heavy word. I would say networking is more building contacts or building acquaintances, because a relationship requires much more time and inputs. And many of us don't want to build relationships with everyone. And that is why we say, no, I don't want to network. Networking is very essential in our lives, and we always do it. It can be social and professional. When the idea of networking started out, it was more, okay, if you go back to very old times. Networking started with, when people were going to fetch water from the well and things like that. That was social networking. But professional networking started with being a very closed club where doctors, engineers, they only had their own people, they would network, they would have some talks and so on. Today, we realize that networking requires diversity. We need people from all walks of life to bring in that freshness into our thinking. You can't be only in your own professions. So sometimes a social acquaintance helps you in your professional life. Sometimes a professional acquaintance helps you in social. So they're overlapping. There's mutual benefit and as always positive outcome. It can be active and passive. When I say this, active and passive actually is passive is when you are part of a huge Facebook group or a WhatsApp group or something, but you know that you are there. So you can still, when you require somebody, you have seen someone posting a lot about some topic. It can be on any topic that you want, and you know that person has the expertise. You can reach out and say, I'm your Facebook follower, or I'm your whatever, Instagram follower, whatever you're following, or you have attended some conference. Attending conferences are passive networking ways, So all of us are doing this. Yet when we think of networking, they say, oh, I don't want to be networking. Okay. We all do most of this. Active is actually keeping in touch. When I say keeping in touch, it doesn't mean sending those good morning messages every morning to people. Don't do that. Active is when you can physically meet people and take time off to actually cultivate, to build a friendship between people. These platforms are for networking, social media, clubs, LinkedIn, so on, and many others. Even religion, you meet people in the temple or the church or the mosque, wherever you meet. That is also a way of networking. So you met the person so many times and you know that person is, say, a doctor. So when you need something, you can reach out and say, can you help me with this? We know networking is helpful. Why is it? We say, oh, most people say, oh, networking is so fake. People, especially with LinkedIn, they all try to put up things, or in many of the social media places where people are putting it up just to show that they're doing something. So it becomes fake and it's being associated with networking. If we understand personal growth and we know what we want, we can use every platform in a positive way. There's enough of good material on social media. Use social media for your good because you are very clear in personal growth where you want to reach. That's why you use your network. Networking is not the reason we feel uncomfortable with networking is because we think it is to climb the corporate ladder or to, butter people up. No, networking is not only upwards. It is all around. It's like a network. It's like a web, You can network with everyone of different walks of life, and it helps you. You think it's a friendship for a purpose. No, it's not friendship. We all know that we're doing this because it is beneficial for us mentally and physically and towards growth. Some people say, oh, we are an introvert. We don't like going around making new friends, these are some of the points, I don't need to read them all out. So you all know why people hate networking. But let's put networking on a different perspective. Network for personal growth and not career enhancement. When you do it for personal growth, career enhancement will automatically come because you are focused on how to better yourself. 360 degrees. Your career enhancement will come because you're good at your job. So network for that. So when you are going on to social media, you're going for a meeting, try to learn as much as you can. You need the experience. You need exposure to various topics. And the higher you go in any organization, whether it is an NGO or a corporate field or your own institution, the more exposure you have to various things, the better it is for your enhancement and personal growth. So look at networking as for personal growth and not, then I think you may not feel so uncomfortable. I'm assuming that most people feel uncomfortable. At least my generation people do feel uncomfortable. We've already said this. It's for personal development, enhancing your knowledge, sensitivity towards other things. When you listen to things, you realize how sensitive. Now you're listening to something about how difficult it is for tribals, or you're listening to something else, or the war zone. You listen to what's happening in Ukraine or Palestine or wherever. It increases your sensitivity to issues, and it will help you. It helps you complete jobs or perfect it. Sometimes someone wants to become a writer, you just discuss the idea of your book with somebody else, or give them the first manuscript, and it helps you perfect it. So when you have the network, you know whom to go to and whom not to go to. Collaborations, all these things will help you if you network. Personally, after 30, 35 years in the corporate field, I would say women networks are very, very important and valuable. So many people say, no, I don't have, in the corporate field especially, people say, oh, I don't have many women friends. Remember, that is the base. You need a women's network. Most organizations will try not to let women become powerful because they have a bargaining tool. So we need to sort of make sure that we do have a women network. Luck works through networking. The reason I'm saying this is because you hear about jobs. Today, nobody is having those formal way of, putting out saying that these are the jobs required, jobs in my organization available, and so on. You hear about a job, you hear about an opening, you hear about various things when you network with people through hearsay, and then you can approach. So luck works through networking. Remember that, and keep in touch with people, meet people. Now, how to network? Many of us are very uncomfortable meeting new people. So do your homework. When I say do your homework, is you know that these are the people who are going to be there in a meeting, or this is the person who's going to speak one day if you're there at a physical seminar, or you're invited to someone's home. Just find out a little bit about them so you can start a conversation. You need to be aware on various topics. So whatever the topic of discussion, you are able to also add something because you are aware. So that's why you say read and learn about various things so you can talk about things other than your profession also. Be curious. Start a conversation is difficult, but you know how to. You can start by asking people something about their profession and so on, or that you've seen them, you read about them, or something like that. Sometimes you get into a sticky situation and you need to learn how to network, how to get out of it. My advice is be honest and say, I'm uncomfortable about this, please excuse me. Or you're in a group and people are discussing things which are not what you feel comfortable with. Please excuse me, I need to meet some more people, I'd like to meet some more people, and just move away. There can be situations like that. So you need to learn and feel comfortable getting out of it, and not sticking there and feeling uncomfortable and then come home and feel very horrible about it. Why women networks are important. Most managements, most places, they will say women and children. Women are always put together in your working career, as you will see, especially if there are more number of men, they'll put women always put together. And it's fine if they are put together and they may not see you as individuals. We just discussed, there was a little discussion about, period leaves and so on. The fifth point is do not fear to share. If they don't have a policy, if your corporate company or any other place doesn't have a policy on period leaves, see, you can have policies, but it may not. Like the government says you need to have a creche in every organization that has X number of women, but do they all have? Almost no one has it, right? So policies don't really help, but you need to stand together and ensure that the person who requires the need gets the support. And that's why women support group is very, very important. You do not need to, it doesn't mean that when you're sitting in an office or having an office meeting, you only stick to the women. It means is that you bond with the women elsewhere, but when you have occasions where you can bond with women, with your women colleagues, it is very important. You never know how powerful you can be if you bond with other women in your organization. So please take everyone along and bond with other women. In a party or in an office thing, you don't have to always be only with women. You can listen to everyone, be with everyone, but you should build a bond which goes a long way in supporting one another. We are all having the same kind of discrimination. It doesn't matter whether you are the boss or you are the most junior person. We all are discriminated as of now. I said luck operates through networking. Entrepreneurs often say that a conversation with a friend or a chance conversation with a co-traveler help them make the necessary changes. Someone may be speaking about something else, and then suddenly you get the idea, and think, oh, I can use that for my business as well, or that's a good learning experience. So networking helps entrepreneurs the most. It helps everyone. Getting a new job, sometimes it's just, through word of mouth. Someone says, oh, that person has resigned from that position. So you can apply. You can go through the formal thing, but you get to know about the job through your network. E-commerce uses referral services. Not only e-commerce, even jobs, many of the IT companies use it in terms of referral. You can bring in applications and you earn points and so on. They all understand the importance of networking. Many clubs say you bring in a member and you get a discount on this and so on. Everybody, they have understood the importance of networking, and networking is important even for your personal growth. It is very, very important because it gives you exposure to events. It gives you information which you may not otherwise have time to get. Gives you ideas, experiences, everything. Personal development is easier through effective networking. And personal development brings about career enhancement. Personal development brings you happiness and peace and mental and physical well-being. So in conclusion, I hope I haven't taken too much of time. The 4 basic ingredients to enrich our lives are personal growth and progress, struggles and trials. Struggles are very important because it helps us become a stronger person and learn more about ourselves. Happiness is important, and we work towards getting that. Mental and physical well-being. So these are the 4 ingredients that we look for. We can get it faster through effective networking, and we can, it comes through personal development and keep introspecting about ourselves. So I end my presentation here. Thank you very much. I just ran through the whole thing because I think we didn't have much of time. Yes, it's already 4:30. I'm happy to take any type of questions if there are.
Thank you so much, ma'am. On behalf of everyone present here, I want to express our deepest gratitude for your valuable discussion. Your insights have been truly enlightening, equipping us with the necessary tools to navigate the complexities of networking and personal growth in leadership roles. So thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insights and perspective with us today. The floor is now open for questions from the audience. You can raise your hands or type in the Q&A box. Meanwhile, I would request Professor Vibhuti Patel ji to give her comments on the.
May I just thank IMPRI and Professor Vibhuti Patel, especially for inviting me. I listened to some of the earlier talks, a few sessions before, and I found them all very interesting. It has helped me in personal growth and really opened my mind on many of the topics. Unfortunately, some of the ones which I didn't open, when I opened it now, I realize I run out of, I think it's only open for a period of time, so I couldn't really listen to them. But I must say they were all very, very interesting. And thank you, Professor Vibhuti Patel. And Reed, thank you very much. You've done a very nice job in putting things together.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think Ms. Usha Abraham's lecture was extremely useful in not only for individual women who are either studying or developing career, but I would say even elected women representatives should have this kind of talk, because they are suddenly, like from housewife, they are given such a big task of managing the constituency. And now we are going to have this Mahila Vidhayak, no, that women's reservation in the legislature and parliament. There also, I think it will be very useful. So I think it's a very insightful, and you have been in the corporate world. Generally, corporate bosses, they think in terms of pyramid, no, that you have to climb up. But you are talking more like a feminist movement, where we say that networking is very important. And it is called circular thinking versus pyramidal thinking. Those who are competitive mercenary, who believe in might is right, they think in a very different way. They see every individual as a rival, and they see all human relations as zero-sum game. Either you win over, or they will win you over, or they will overpower you. So that kind of thinking, I think we need to give up. As we network, networking is basically sharing. I learn from you, you learn from me. And it can happen both laterally and also horizontally and also vertically. Because when we say that team of people from different verticals and different generations coming together, that also is extremely useful for the institution and for the organizational development, and also for the personal development. Now I see new change that earlier, like in 2005 or during the decade, the kind of chasm that we used to see between the younger generation of women and older elderly women, that is now going. There is a more maturity on the part of all, because even the elderly women, they don't talk about we were like this and you are like this. That kind of talk has gone. That bullying young women on the basis of your experience, that has gone. And other thing that young women also, they don't tell you that you are a dinosaur. You are of no use, no? You are talking of Stone Age and Iron Age. So that is gone. So I think the humility on the part of all women, which is bringing intergenerational networking, I think that's what is the message that I got from your talk. And I think it's very, very useful, extremely useful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a question from Anisha ji.
Joshi ji. Yeah, you can unmute and speak.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Actually, I didn't have a question because ma'am's session was quite like explanatory, and like I just wanted to say thank you. And right now I'm still at work, so I'm sorry that I'm unable to come on video. Thank you so much for the session, ma'am. After like listening to so many things about hustling and finally getting to know that we do have to wind down, and like we have to, like, what do you say, take a moment to think about everything too. That's an important part. Thank you so much for the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Sunidhi ji, you can go ahead.
Sure. Good evening, ma'am. I'm Sunidhi, and I'm currently in college as well. I would like to ask you a question. The question I wanted to ask you was, what are the potential and pitfalls or mistakes to avoid when networking or pursuing, personal development as a young woman leader, especially?
My first thought, this question is very nice and very good. My first thought is that don't make yourself exclusive to. It's a very natural habit to have an exclusive network. That doesn't help in personal development. You need to have a variety. Diversity helps the most, to get different points of view, because then you think. Our system doesn't allow us to think, and the kind of life that we lead, we don't have time to think. So the diversity helps you. And then you need to, of course, if somebody is, that's why I said first step is to put your value statement. Your values should meet what, you can't go with someone who believes that, making money through, if you don't believe in it, you can't go network with someone who says making money is by cheating someone, if your values are so different. So once you put down your values, you will know whom to network with. What are the type? But make it as diverse. Just because you are an architect or you are a engineer or you are a doctor, don't meet only doctors. Then you become a boring person and you don't grow even in your career growth. As you grow higher, what they look for is not a person who is a expert in one subject. It's a person who can do overall management, who understands and empathizes with other issues. That's very important. And if it is only when you meet people from different walks of life that you can empathize with other situations, because we can't experience everything. So that's how you sort of work it out. Once you have your value statement in place, everything will fall in place. So sit down and think about your value statement, put down your value statement. Don't just put honesty, integrity, blah, blah, blah. That's how corporate companies do. It doesn't make sense. Your personal value statement. I will not compromise on this. I will not compromise on A, B, C. Be very clear what is it that you will not compromise on, and then work towards your goal.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for your
In the
insights.
previous sessions also, question came out that how do young women deal with microaggression, gaslighting, and also the toxicity at the workplace or in interpersonal relations as well as networks. Yeah, that would be very helpful even to me because I always get bullied. So,
yeah, it's actually a part of life, and we don't realize that if a company or a situation, like for example, you have got 30 people on this panel or so many people on the panel, you're not competing with each other. We're all bringing in something, So similarly in a workplace, we must understand and, imbibe in ourselves that if they have taken 5 people, that means they need 5 people. So we are not competing, and we can do better when we collaborate, when we have a good understanding with each other and bring in the plus points of everyone, and I think like Professor Vibhuti Patel herself said, humility is most important. We have to realize that we learn from everyone. We can learn from anyone and everyone. It's never top down. Recently, I was reading something and they said, why do we always draw a family tree, or whether it is what is those diagrams, we draw it from the top and then downwards, right? Basically, it should be from the roots. We start from the roots and then go up. How do we draw a tree? The roots are the most important. So put your values. That is most important. And then you realize the trunk helps every single branch. So our colleagues and others are the branches of this tree, where the roots are our value statement. I think we have to start looking at perspectives a little differently, and then we'll probably find it easier to work. And finally, we all want to have a stress-free life, as much as a stress-free life. Of course, stress is part of life, but as much as possible, less stress. So our aim is the same.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. The way you patiently addressed our questions has not only expanded our knowledge, but has also inspired us to explore further depths. So thank you so much, ma'am. Seeing no more questions, we would be moving on to the next session. Thank you, ma'am. It is my honor and privilege to call upon Mr. Yash Agarwal ji to deliver a keynote address on career insights for young women leaders in public policy. We welcome you, sir.
Hey, hi, Reeth. Thank you for having me. I heard Yash Agarwal ji and I was like, how old have I become? Just call me Yash. Okay. thank you everyone for joining the call today, right? I understand it's a Saturday evening, you have better things to do. What I'll quickly do is, run you through some very basic frameworks of what even is policy, right? Why do we care about this field? How is it structured, right? What are the pillars of policy making, right? Sounds technical, really isn't, fairly practical. Let me just increase the brightness a little. Yeah, right. And then, just quickly get through the careers bit of it, right? That how do you build careers in this space, right? And how does that whole world look right now? I think I can share my screen. Yes, I can. Perfect. 1 second. Wow, a lot of PDFs on my laptop. I just realized. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So I won't be running through, the entire deck because this is like a longer 2-day thing that I do mostly at universities, IITs, IIMs. But for this sort of a call, yeah, briefly about me, right? So I've been working in policy for about 6 years now. I was born and raised in Calcutta. I started my career by working in the parliament, worked in consulting for a year, then at Twitter for a couple of years. And you might have heard of this committee, Public Policy India. That's something I've been trying to build for the past 4 years. And yeah, I do a lot of consulting and work on the side. So that's about me. We're not covering everything today. Let me just quickly get straight to the policy bit. Yes. Okay. So what is public policy, right? You know, even keeping this sort of a definition that I've shared aside, right? Does someone want to take a guess? Maybe raise your hands and answer what do you understand from, what policy is? There's no wrong answer, so that's okay. And I'm sorry, I can't see the Zoom screen. I can only see my screen. So Reet, if you can help, just, someone raise their hands.
Yeah, I'll just check.
Just take a guess. Just take a stab at it. Yeah? No contributions? Okay, no worries. Maybe we can take this up as we go along, right? But, broadly speaking, how we define policy is that it's the art and science of a public agency solving for a public problem using public money via public solutions, right? So, for example, if the road in front of your house is broken, right? That's a public problem because the society at large faces it, right? But if there's, like a theft inside your apartment, that's a private issue, right? So public problem solved by a public agency, which is basically what? The government, right? At any level, state, national, local, right? Technically, only the government can make policy. The other parts of policy, which the civil society and private sector can do, but policy making, what we call the siding authority, right? It rests solely with the government, right? So a public agency solving for a public problem using public money, which is what? Taxpayers' money, right? Using a public solution. So, if the government rebuilds the road, they won't be like, hey, these 5 people paid the most taxes, only they get to use it, right? The society at large benefits as well, right? So the art and science of a public agency solving for a public problem using public money via public solution is public policy, right? And a policy job would be any job that allows you to participate in this entire process, right? So even if you're working in a village somewhere at the grassroots, right, on say education, right, that's a policy job because you're implementing policy. And again, we'll come back to this in detail, right? So I hope that paints a picture, right, that what's the most practical way to define what public policy is as a field, right? Okay, I think my concentration. Yes, wait. Before we come to this, no, actually, fair enough. Cool. Now we understand that everything under the sun has a public policy element, right? From gender to healthcare, education, environment, climate change, urban management, poverty removal, even nuclear energy. I mean, you name it, and it's a concern of governments and governance, right? Even something that is not maybe explicitly regulated is impacted by policy, like crypto, for example, right? So everything under the sun. That's why that's how we call it. But how does policy making even work, right? So it's a 5-pillar process, and it's the same around the world, not just in India, right? We captured by an acronym called IDIME, IDIME. So that's ideation, design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Again, the 5 pillars of policy making is the same in India and around the world, right? IDIME, ideation, design, implementation, monitoring, evaluation. What does that mean? So sticking to the same example of a broken road, right? Where does a public agency, which is basically the government, right, get an idea about a public problem, which is the broken road in this case, right? The first pillar is ideation, right? So where does it get the idea, right, of any policy problem? In this case, it's a broken road, but it can be any other policy problem as well, right? So there are hundreds of sources, right? So for example, a media can report that this road is broken, there are issues. We as citizens can write to the government, or the local MP, MLA can take it up, or a think tank can come out with a report or whatever, right? There can be citizen activist groups and all of that, right? So there's basically hundreds of sources, right, from which a public agency, which is the government, can come to know about a public problem, which is a broken road in our example, right? And anyways, people running the government even live in the same society as we do, right? So they can see what the daily issues are, right? So that's ideation, right? Next is design. So the government is like, okay, the road is broken. It is a public issue because there's accidents, there's economic loss, there's loss of time, and everyone faces it daily. So we have to solve for it, right? It's a public problem. We can either hire people on our own payrolls to rebuild the road, or we can get the private sector to do this. It'll be faster, cheaper, plus government hiring is complex, etc. Right? So, like, fine, the road is broken. We'll have it rebuilt by the private sector, and we'll pay them. Right? So the policy has been designed. Right? Then you come to the next pillar, policy making, which is implementation. Right? So there's nothing known as government money, right? It's all taxpayers' money. So it's either it's money that we are paying as taxes today and the government is spending, or the government is taking on debt, so which is money our children will pay. Simple, right? So the idea is basically to do it at the cheapest rate possible, right? The so-called L1 system in government, right? So the government will be like, okay, let's do one thing. Let's bring out a tender, right? Different contractors can bid for this tender, and whoever bids the lowest wins the contract, right? The L1 system, as we call it. So take a particular, a tender comes out, and different contractors bid for it, different companies, construction companies bid for it, and a particular contractor wins, and the road is rebuilt, right? The government pays them, and that's the end of the story. If you think about it, in the third pillar itself, out of the 5-pillar process of policy making, the public agency has solved the public problem using public money. The road has been rebuilt, right? Now, any such contract will have, a maintenance clause, right? That for the next 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, you have to maintain the road. Whoever won the contract, and this is the same in private sector, by the way. It's not just a government thing, right? So that brings us to the next pillar, policy making, which is monitoring, right? That, in a sense, the policy solution that has been implemented, how well is it working, right? So here the government is basically monitoring whether the contractor is keeping their end of the bargain, right? Especially during monsoons or whatever, right? And if they are not, then you simply sue them, right? That's, there's a reason why the government is the biggest litigator in India, right? Sues the most and gets sued the most, right? And in the end of the time period, whatever that might be, right? You come to the final pillar of policy making, which is evaluation, right? So here you're trying to figure out what worked and what did not, right? Next time, should we blacklist this contractor? And next time, should we rebuild the road ourselves? Or next time, should we build concrete roads instead of asphalt? If you go to Bombay, a lot of roads are now made out of concrete because the frequency of rains there and all of that, right? Basically, do an evaluation so that you can figure out what worked and what did not, so that the next time this public agency is faced with a similar public problem, it can respond better. Does that make sense? Does that paint a picture? Does that close the cycle for you? Right? 5 pillars of policy making, same in India, around the world, IDME, DIME, right? There's small nuances I've left out. For example, some policy changes need legislative approval, right, by the parliament or state assembly, right? But broadly, I mean, this is it. Iske bahar kuch hai nahi. This is all there is to policy making, right? The 5 pillars, right? Anything and everything we do falls within these 5 pillars somewhere, right? As policy professionals and in this entire sector at large, right? I think I skipped a slide. No, yeah, perfect, right? No, actually, before I come to this, why this becomes important is in each of these pillars, right? There are different skills needed and different kind of organization that do the work. Okay. So for example, if you tell me that, hey, I want to work in policy research, right? Then basically what you're telling me is that you want to work in policy design, because that is the pillar out of the 5-pillar process in which the government reaches out to think tanks, experts, universities, academia, right? For, their inputs on best practices, or maybe how other cities or countries have solved for the same policy problem that they're trying to solve or they're trying to design for, right? So that those knowledge, those, insights can be baked into the policy design itself, right? Similarly, if you tell me that, hey, I want to work in, say, social impact, right? Development sector, then basically what you're telling me is that you want to work in policy implementation, because that's what NGOs do. Bring policy initiatives closer to the people at the grassroots. Take Teach for Indian Education, for example, right? Now, the skills needed are also very different for most of these sectors. So, the skills needed to work in, say, policy ideation are very different from evaluation. Ideation is mostly surveying and research. Evaluation is mostly econometrics, statistics, data analysis, right? The kind of organizations that work on each of these pillars are also very different, right? So, the kind of organization that work in, say, policy design are very different from implementation. Design, again, is mostly, think tanks, universities. Implementation is mostly civil society organizations, NGOs, NPOs, CSOs, right? So I hope that, paints a picture for you that public policy, yes, but within policy, this is the law of the land. This is how everything is organized. This is how everything is structured, right? This is how things work, right? There's a method to the madness, so to speak, right? The final bit that I wanted to cover was, how does public policy work in India right now from a careers perspective, right? So there's this 3 things. Spaces function, and vertical. Okay. Again, there's nothing outside this. Everything within to do with anything to do with jobs and careers is captured within this sort of a 3 legs. I'll explain how. So spaces, spaces is where you can work in public policy, right? So for example, you can work in the research space as we discussed, right? So that's think tanks, academia, universities. You can work in the public sector space. That's basically working with the government, right? So in the public sector space, you can work at the government of India level, right? So Niti Aayog, Invest India, a lot of ministries hire young professionals, right? Within the public sector space, you can work at the state government level, right? So a lot of, so states don't have ministry, they have departments. A lot of state departments hire on contractual roles. A lot of chief ministers have fellowships, like Haryana, Maharashtra, whatever. A lot of states have fellowships to work in this thing, right? With the elected representatives. Sorry, with the executive. So, you can work in the public sector space. You can work at both the levels. You can work in the legislative space, right? Again, at both the levels. So, for example, at the union government level, in the legislative space, the parliament has a Lamb Fellowship, Mukherjee Fellowship. The Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha Secretary keeps hiring time and again, right? In the legislative space, you can also work at the state government level. So, for example, the Delhi Assembly has DRC Fellowship, right? I think Chhattisgarh also had something for the state assembly, right? You can work in the private sector space, like how I worked at Twitter for a couple of years in a public policy role, right? Most large companies have public policy teams. In fact, even startups do these days, right? You can work in the policy consulting space, right? So, KPMG, Deloitte, BCG, PwC, huge, policy practices. Different names: social sector practice, government affairs practice, public impact practice, public policy practice, whatever. But basically policy work, right? You can work in the policy advocacy space, right? So basically, which is lobbying, right? And there's a huge space in India right now, right? Given the number of new companies entering India right now, for manufacturing and also some investment, right? So I worked at such a for myself, Chase India. There's AppCo, there's Quantum Hub, right? Very flourishing space. You can work in the political consulting space, right? So, even a place like IPAC mostly hires people with a policy background because politicians are technically just elected lawmakers, right? You can work in what we call the social impact space, right? So that's a huge space onto itself, right? Thousands of organizations working at the grassroots across different sectors: healthcare, gender, education, environment, Praja, Pratham, Teach for India, whatever, right? You can work in what we call the supranational entity space. So that's basically, any global dev sector org with an India presence. So that's UN, UNICEF, World Bank, JPEL, UNDP, UNESCO, whatever, right? I can go on and on. So there's hundreds of spaces that you can work in public policy. And in each space, there's hundreds of organizations that do different kinds of work. Does that make sense? Right? The next bit for us to understand would be vertical, right? So vertical is, essentially, what is the sectoral focus area for you? Which sector are you working on? That's the vertical that you're working in, okay? So it can be gender, healthcare, education, environment, climate change, urban management, poverty, whatever, right? That is of interest to you, right? But the sector that you focus on is the vertical that you're working in. Now, it is usually advised to try out different verticals before specializing in something, right? Try out different verticals, sectors before you become an expert in something as you grow in your career, right? That's usually how it is advised, but no hard and fast rule. Even if you pick a specialization very early on, that's fine. Big deal, right? And the final bit is function. Function is, in what role are you working in public policy? So again, spaces, where are you working? Vertical is in which focus area? Function is in what role? Where, which, and what? The 3 legs of any and every policy job. We'll come back to this. Come back to functions, right? So if you tell me that, hey, I work in a design outreach sort of a role in a public policy firm, your function is comms, right? Communications. If you tell me you work in a branding role, your function is marketing. Liaisoning role, function is partnerships. Program manager role, function is operations. Risk advisory role, function is legal. I can go on and on, right? So there's hundreds of roles and functions that you can work in a policy firm or any firm for that matter. Now, why this becomes important is, if you think about it, every single job lies at the intersection of these three. Every single job, without fail, will be in a particular space, focus on a particular vertical, and involve a certain function. Without fail, you can take up any job that you want, right? What this does, and I've been teaching this for 6 years. Every single time, people write back after a few months that this works like magic, because you can now suddenly do a dispassionate analysis for yourself that, boss, what is the gap? Like, if you're trying to apply somewhere, right? You can do an analysis, a very structured, methodical, foundational analysis for yourself, that now that I know that there are 3 pillars or 3 legs to every job, which pillar am I lacking on? Do I not have enough experience in this space? Do I not have enough skills for this function? Do I not have enough background in this vertical, right? And then work to fill those gaps accordingly, or choose the job according to, according to the JD in which you have strength in all 3 pillars. Does that make sense? Right? Because, the biggest weakness of policy is that, there's no structural guidance or understanding or awareness that, what is the method behind the madness? How is this entire thing organized? How is it running, right? What is the principles? Then, why things work the way they do in policy and social impact. So this is what I broadly wanted to cover, right? Very quickly, that what public policy is, how do you define it? What are the pillars of policy making, right? What kind of skills are needed in which other pillars? What are kind of organization work in each of these pillars? How is it organized from a careers perspective in India right now, right? But I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, sir. Your expertise and insights have provided us with a deeper understanding of what exactly the public policy sector is and about the opportunities and challenges within this field. Now the floor is open for questions from the audience. You can raise your hands or type in the Q&A box.
Already 1 minute.
Yes, Nikita Desai, you can go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for that, Yash. It was a good presentation of the landscape. Just a few questions because, I don't know if you do personal level consulting, but when you have a lot of breadth of experience, right? When it's cutting sectors, I actually signed up for a year-long program at a business school, but they clarified to me that they had no career support program at all. So I'm just wondering that, how does it work in terms of breaking in, especially if you're coming from a city like Mumbai, which is not the center of public policy in terms of, even conversation. So would you have some suggestions for people outside really Delhi in terms of how they can break it or get the right networks? So the course helped me in terms of networks, right? I built a great network of some senior IAS officers, etc. But frankly, outside, again, a lot of companies, I believe, especially some of the names that you shared, will all have an agenda-driven kind of model, right? With this public policy, will have a particular focus or agenda that they're driving. So supposing I'm looking at purely education and I'm looking at education policy, what would be your recommendations in terms of, some steps or things to build ahead if you're coming from outside Delhi?
Thank you so much for that, Nikita. Firstly, just answering your question, I've just shared my LinkedIn profile link here. So there, I have a lot of links. In fact, we run multiple communities in Mumbai as well. Like we have Mumbai policy, public policy and social impact chapters. In fact, we have that for 20 of India's largest cities, for not just Bombay, Delhi, or Bangalore, but even the smaller cities, right? And where we share hundreds of jobs internships every week. So that's that. But coming to strictly to the question that you asked, right? A few things actually. Think about it this way, that India is a very low trust society, right? It's a very low trust society. Like we're inherently suspicious of new people, new places, new things, right? There's a reason that the Tatas can sell us anything from salt to steel to software, or even a school, right? Like in the case of TIS, right? Because they've built trust over centuries. In a low trust society, what you do is either you build trust over years and decades, or you borrow trust from institutions. So for example, if you were to be hiring me for a job, right? If I've come to you for an interview, you would be like, yeah, I don't know if Yash has policy advocacy skills or not, but Yash has worked in consulting, in the parliament, at Twitter. He must have those skills. You're borrowing trust from institutions I've been a part of. Simple, right? So what happens, here is that it just becomes a game of credibility, basically, right? Of credentials, credibility and credentials, right? In a society like that. And to build credentials, it's a three-step process. You have to work on all three, right? It's not just about the education sector, but any sector, so to speak, right? First is that you become better aware about what the credentials that matter in your field are. Okay. Talk to people, attend meetups or whatever, but become better aware about what the credentials that matter in your field are. So for example, if you're a lawyer, then the credentials might be which judge did you do your clerkship with. If you're a CA, then the credential might be where do you do your articleship, right? If you're a policy professional, then the credential might be, which institution have you been associated with in any shape or form, intern, volunteer, or there can be something else also. That's not the point, right? But the point is, you figure out what the credentials that matter in your field are, because the credentials that matter in each field are very different, right? Once you've done that, step two is you present your existing credentials better, right? So, I was mentioning this earlier, or not on this call, but a previous call, that see, public policy is entirely a people's business, right? It's a purely people's business, right? We do very little technical work. I mean, we do, but that's related to, just the monitoring and evaluation bit of it, right? Much of it is very, it's a soft skills driven enterprise, right? You have to be good with people, stakeholder management, critical thinking, how do you communicate and all of it, right? What is the story that you tell? What is the narrative that you weave around yourself, right? Really, really ends up mattering more than a lot of other fields. And so something like, your LinkedIn, your personal website, work portfolio, it all matters. Why I am on this call today is, probably because, I mean, all the events that I do, like I built yashagarwal.com, 7 years back, .co, sorry, right? And works for me 24/7, right? My personal website, even while I'm asleep, right? Same for my LinkedIn, right? The amount of opportunity that come my way is insane, right? The point being that instead of telling someone that policy research, just send them a policy research paper you have written, right? Show your skills. Don't just talk about it, right? So present your existing credentials better, right? That's step 2, right? Once you do 1 and 2, you can do step 3, which is creating new credentials for yourself, right? So this can be a mix and match of any or all of the following. You can do a full-time job. You can do a full-time degree. You can do a part-time job. You can do a part-time degree. You can intern somewhere. You can volunteer somewhere. You can do like a short-term online course. You can do enroll yourself into a fellowship, yada, 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 right? Now the problem becomes when, when everyone just wants to do step 3 without, doing step 1 and 2, right? But that's not how things would work anyway, right? So I hope that, answers your question at a more structural sort of a level, right? I can tell you one thing, Bombay and Bangalore and New Delhi, I think these 3 cities have much of the policy space, probably 80% of the entire policy space between them. Yes, Delhi is maybe a 40 and the other two are 2020, but it's still there, right? Especially the last few years, it's changing very quickly, right? The idea is, just get to know people within Bombay in your space a little better, right? In fact, I personally, for my community, do, multiple meetups, workshops in Bombay almost every month. We are doing one in Pune next week in like 4 days, right? So things keep happening where, we get experts, a lot of job opportunities and everything, right? So just have that sense of awareness and, work on this sort of a 3-step thing. In as little as 6 months, just become far more credible as a candidate wherever you're looking to apply, right? And it'll just work out. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Shwetama ji, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, am I audible?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good evening. So, my very basic question I would like to go with, like, if I want to do anything related to the public policy, or if I have any idea in my mind which I want to pitch in for the public policy field, but the but the major constraint which I feel as a middle class person is the financial constraint. So, if I have some idea in my mind and I want to pitch in or I want to work upon it, so what are the what are the exact things which I need in support to cater the financial in support to, in order to come across those financial barriers? Like if I want to do anything for the women's education, let's say for the girls of class 1 to 5 and all, something like that. So will my is my idea is going to attract, or like do I need to have sufficient economical resources, or what, apart from the digital marketing or the social media thing? I mean, how to start with this?
Shraddha, what will happen is that, I think for a lot of us in our lives, we want to do something for the soup, which is something that pays the bills, and something for the soul, right? Which keeps us happy, gives us fulfillment. The reason that I have a full-time job alongside running PPI, right, for the last 5-6 years is the same, right? Because, the day I try and monetize PPI, I'll have to make decisions which I don't want to, right? The point being that if you don't come from great wealth sort of a background, right, which most of us do not, just take up a job, right? The thing is, the job will do a lot more than just paying your bills, Ratma. It will give you networks. It will give you awareness. It will give you exposure, critical exposure. It will give you opportunities to pitch your idea, right? To meet interesting people, right? It'll really give you a lot more than a paycheck, especially early on in your career for sure, right? Take up a job, work somewhere good, just build your way up the ladder, right? Once you feel that, you reached a stage, and that can mean as little as 3 to 4 years, by the way, not 30 and 40, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm doing very well and I'm able to save some time, right, from my day job, and maybe a little bit of money as well, right? Then be like, okay, within these constraints, right? Say I have amount X and time Y, right? How much can I dedicate to create a product Z, right? The other thing that will do, Swatma, is that, if you're given 3-4 years to a job and just build a career in that sense, you'll also know people as friends or colleagues or acquaintances who'll be happy to, in a sense, partner with you, right? And you may also be able to test it out at a smaller scale. That is this idea worth it? Is someone else already working on this idea, or is there a better thing I can do? Whatever, right? So yeah, it's very natural to always, especially early on, be like, hey, I have this idea and it'll change a lot of things. I need to get started. But most of the time, that's not the most practical route. Right? Just get
And
started.
also, is my idea like it has to be necessarily very unique, or like someone has never worked upon, or it could be like someone is already working upon and I'm just contributing to the existing problem and its solution?
I mean, that is something you can answer. I can, or no one can answer for you, right?
Okay.
Because at the end, the only thing that will matter is that the society has to see some value in it,
Right.
right? So even if you're trying to solve for something someone else is trying to solve for, maybe you're solving for it better, and that's great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to call upon Professor Vibhuti Patel ji for her comments on the lecture.
Ma'am, you're mute, I think.
The young person sharing the experiences on how to get involved in policy making. Our route was very different. We were in the women's movement, and all the policies we brought, the changes, our way of doing is what organizing technical workshops, doing advocacy, then sitting with the politicians, sympathetic politicians, giving and having sessions on gender sensitization and going into the implications of if the new policies or programs or laws that come, what would be the impact on the society. And that was the route in which we functioned during 80s and 90s. Now things have changed now. Because the social movement route is one, legislative route is another, and third one is judicial route. So some of you who are working in the legal field, they will bring policy changes in a different way. And as Yash also told us, that importance of research, think tank, dealing with the metadata, and evaluation, impact analysis. All these are also very important in bringing changes in the content of policy. That is also very important, because so many times policies are very good and lofty, but operationally when you try to do it, it is impractical, and that comes only with the experience. So I think it was a very interesting, and you shared your personal experiences of working at a different level. I think that is more important, because otherwise things can be read in the books or on the net. Lot is given about these issues, but personally, your anecdotes are extremely valuable. And but still, I would like to know that how were you involved in policy related issues right from your college days, and did you opt for the disciplines such as public policy or pol science, which gave you theoretical grounding, and which then you tried to critically reflect on it in a personal experience? That I would like to still
No,
your
thank you
journey.
so much for asking, ma'am. The thing is, I'm in policy because it's not a career choice. It's a very personal thing for me. I come from very humble background. So even when I was growing up, sometimes my school fees was a challenge, and so I was almost. I mean, and then things changed for the better dramatically over the years, right? As India's economy grew, and there was this particular incident which essentially, I won't go into the details, but which basically, in a sense, informed me about the power of the government and policymaking in general. Right? There was this particular incident. I was in grade 11th, and I was like, okay, government has so much power. Great. Maybe we should work here someday. I did not know what public policy was. Right. The only degree I have is in journalism. Right. I went to Symbiosis Pune for a 3-year degree, 2016 to 19. Right. BA in mass comm. So I have never studied policy, so to speak, at all. In fact, right. How I've built, all the whatever career I have, right, is because while I was in college, I just knew that I don't know anything. And so I just wanted to learn. Right. And so, in the 6 semesters of university, I was just intern, left, right, and center. Right. I was just work everywhere. And by the way, none of these were internship openings. All of these were internships I created for myself by cold emailing, DMs, reaching out, whatever, Sam, Dan, Bhed, everything. Right. But I created the internship, they didn't exist. Right. And so by the time I graduated in 2019, ma'am, I was 20 years old, and had all these internships. And then honestly, I could do whatever I want to do, because this space really cares more about your work experience than anything else. Work gets you work. Kaam se hi kaam milta hai. Quite literally. Right. And yeah, and same, even when I got into Twitter, I was 22. The next youngest person was 29 in Mexico City. And I was fairly shocked. And again, my manager tells me it happened solely because of the experience I already had before, even I applied or tried to get it. Right. So the point being that no, have never had like a policy education. Forget policy education, even an sort of extensive background in this space. No, have always cared a lot about public policy. We should remember that every 1% increase in India's economic growth is like 2 million families out of poverty. So not just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? And yeah, the mission is that no matter what I do for a job or for a living, right? But the mission will always remain to constantly get more people in the space, well-intentioned people in the space, and just grow the entire cake, right? Grow the entire space at large, right? More individuals, more ideas, more knowledge, more awareness, right? Even if we can have 10 right-minded people in the system, so to speak, that's hell of a lot of impact for a country this large. So yeah.
Very much. It reminds us of Mr. MGR, who as a child was very humble background he had, and so many times he did not have meals, and his neighbor would give him sambar and rice.
Yeah.
So when he
And
became
he
a
started the midday
politician
meal.
in 1964, when he became
Yeah.
chief minister, first policy he announced was that no one in my state will go
Yeah.
hungry. I think
Absolutely.
it's so important. Even same with the Flavia, after 14 years of extremely cruel and brutal domestic violence against her and her children, you can see how Flavia and Audrey de Mello have contributed to so many policies on not only domestic violence, child sexual abuse, because they all have first-hand experience of it. So I think there is something which, the fire in your belly, which you say that comes when you have had first-hand experience. And it's good you shared. Now we can see all your lecture in a perspective that it's basically the social good which motivated you to enter into this domain. Thank you. Thank you very much for
Thank you
being
so
so
much.
honest and transparent. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I actually had a question, which was like you mentioned that you created internships for yourself. So what would be some advice you would give to us so that we could also do the same?
Just see how you can add value. Okay. So I remember I wanted to work with this organization in the education sector, and they did not have an opening. And what I did was I literally created an entire 12-page deck of, education sector in India right now, possible policy reforms, their role in the sector, and the final slide was how I can add value and send it to them. And they created an internship. And I did this for all 7, 8 internships I did. So what that did was, that just gave me a huge leg up because I was not competing with anyone. I was literally creating options that did not exist, right? It was easier back in 2016 when I started. It's not that easy today because, a lot of people do cold emailing, but still not impossible for sure, right? And also be smart about it, right? Just reach out and just show how you can add value, right? Why someone should, give you that opportunity. Very politely follow up, try and reach out to someone else within the org if they can put in a word, right? Don't spam anyone at all, right? But while being mindful of that, just try and see if you can work your word and your work can get through, right? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Seeing no further questions, we will now be coming to an end of our session. So, as we come to an end of day 5 of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, I would firstly like to call upon Professor Vibhuti Patel ji to deliver her closing remarks.
I think this session focusing on personal development, networking, how individually a professional can enter into policy making. I think it's a very, very, very important because so far we were focusing only on the meta theories and macro level intervention by the collectives. So I think this is also how individuals can make difference in the life of the people, of the community, of the nation is very important. Here I would like to quote Margaret Mead, a famous anthropologist who said, and I quote, "A small group of thoughtful people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has," because she was an anthropologist who had done exhaustive work right from the time of barbarism and primitive existence to the 19th century, So this is what has come out. And Maya Angelou also says that, and I quote, "The need for change bulldozed a road down the center of my mind." So it is so important that once you have this kida in your mind that I want to change the situation. So it's very, very important for us to get all the wherewithal, and especially all 3 lectures today, which they have provided us how we can go about, So the practical tips they have given. Only one thing which I saw missing was that here also gender works. Because while conducting workshops with women in the corporate world, one realized that the double standards are still existing. So if you have in fact, in those training programs, only these verses came out that the Family picture on his desk. Ah, a solid, responsible family man. Family picture on her desk. Her family will come before her career. His desk is cluttered. He is obviously a hard worker and a busy man. Her desk is cluttered. She is obviously a disorganized scatterbrain. He is talking with his co-workers. He must be discussing the latest deal. She is talking with her co-workers. She must be gossiping. He is not at his desk. He must be at a meeting. She is not at her desk. She must be in the ladies' room. He is having lunch with the boss. He is on his way up. She is having lunch with the boss. They must be having an affair. The boss criticized him. He will improve his performance. Boss criticized her. She will be very upset. He has got an unfair deal. Did he get angry? She got an unfair deal. Did she cry? He is getting married. He'll get more settled. She is getting married. She'll get pregnant and leave. He's having a baby. He will need a raise. She is having a baby. She will cost the company money in maternity benefits. He's going on a business trip. It is good for his career. She is going on a business trip. What will her husband say? He is leaving for a better job. He knows how to recognize good opportunity. She is leaving for a better job. Women cannot be dependable. So these are the kind of double standards still existing, and we need to deal with that. And that is why what Madam Usha Abraham said, it is important to network. It is important to network because anytime you get burnout, anytime you get stress, because in the previous session, we also spoke about burnout, feeling of isolation, depression. I think networks help you in learning from each other's experiences. So with that, I think we can close the session today.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I believe that the abstract you read out really aptly suggests the
It came out of collective wisdom while conducting workshop with women in the corporate world. So different women, they all started adding lines after lines. No, so there is no one particular author. It is came out in the process. Thank you. Yeah, so.
I believe it really shows the reality of the world we live in right now. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
So as we come to an end of day 7 of Young Women Leaders in Public Policy Fellowship, an online national winter school program, a 2-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship, I, Reetlath, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. We are grateful to our experts for day 7, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, Professor Rukaiya Joshi ji, Ms. Anna Usha Abraham ji, and Mr. Yash Agarwal ji, for taking out their valuable time and giving us an opportunity to the participants to learn from this online certificate program. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for this session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for your learning. We look forward to welcoming you for our 8th day of this certificate course on 24th February 2024 at 3 p.m. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, conducting the session so well.
Thank you, ma'am.